Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly for pricing at tmosso@thewatchbox.com. The last wholesale redesign of the Aqua Terra was in 2017, but in 2021, Omega launched this version of the Seamaster Aqua Terra, which is the small seconds. The watch measures 41 millimeters in diameter in a combination of Sedna red gold and stainless steel. It is 13.5 millimeters thickened from lug tip to lug tip, 47.6 millimeters with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it wears well, comfortable, flat enough to fit underneath the cuff, and you could see that I would recommend this watch for a much smaller wrist than mine on the basis of the short lug-to-lug dimensions. I think you could pull it off on a wrist of 13.5 centimeters circumference. You could see that it's nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and that's particularly apparent when you look at it down the barrel. I've got a lot of clearance on each side and plenty of clearance to wear it underneath the sleeve. The strap is handsome. It matches the slate blue tone of the dial. We have a little bit of a cross-hatching pattern molded in. There's a stitch. It doesn't bind anything, but it's handsome and traditional. And then we have a deployant clasp with a trigger release, twin triggers. We have a double finish with a combination of polish and satin. You tuck the strap in here. You buckle it in place, you close this up, and then the excess length is underneath the strap, so you don't need minder loops, and no excess length is visible flapping in the breeze. It's just a very secure, handsome, and clean clasp design. The case is familiar, lyre-style lugs. They're beveled inward, they're beveled outward. We know them well, and we have since the early 60s on Seamasters and Speedmasters. You can see the bevel outboard is polished, the mid-case is satinated, the bezel is somewhat stepped inboard of the case band, so the watch looks thinner than it really is. There's a short vertical section of the bezel, and then it has a conical section. We have a slightly countersunk screw-down crown in rose gold. The thing about this rose gold is that it's red gold, to be honest. Omega calls this Sedna. It's basically the same thing as Panerai Oro Rosso, Rolex Everose, or Hublot King Gold, which is to say it has more copper to make it redder and more platinum family alloyed in so that it's less likely to fade with time. Screw-down crown, again, 150 meters of water resistance. The dial features red gold hands, red gold indices, and you can see that there's a diversity of finish, in particular on the indices, which are both satinated and polished on alternating facets. It's an upscale look. The dial has a soft metallic glow to it and a lateral striation that's sort of the teak deck 2.0. Back in the 2000s, Omega debuted the teak deck concept with vertical planking to evoke the deck of a yacht. Well, in 2017, the planking moved from left to right rather than top to bottom, and we get this look right here. You can also see that there's a little rose gold frame for the small seconds, which has several concentric rings to give it a varied appearance, and then there is a date that sits inside. We have an applique Omega logo and marquee, and then we have two subsidiary setting modes. One is this time zone feature, so as the watch continues to tick and keep time, I can travel through time zones, and I can even drive the date forward or backwards as I travel. Pull the crown out one more detent, and now it's in hacking or stop seconds mode, and the feeling of an Omega crown fully withdrawn is incredibly solid. There's none of the wobble that you get on crowns, even from very expensive brands such as Patek and Audemars Piguet. Everything about this watch inspires confidence. Not only is it highly water resistant, it is effectively amagnetic thanks to an anti-magnetic escapement and an amagnetic silicone hairspring. It is resistant to forces greater than 15,000 Gauss. Remember, 1000 Gauss, 1,000 Gauss, that's the Rolex. And while I assume the Rolex is a bit conservatively rated, this is rated to in excess of 15,000. Coaxial escapement tri-level, which is the latest version, realizing George Daniels' original intent for the escapement, which was to extend the intervals between service, to improve chronometry, that is timekeeping, and to extend power reserve, as it is both a direct and indirect impulse escapement with tangential contact between impulsed and impulsing surfaces, so it has very low friction, just the bare minimum necessary. The balance beats away at the silicon hairspring specific 25,200 vibration per hour rate that you'll see on basically all Swatch Group watches that have silicone hairsprings. For shock resistance, we have a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance. We have two barrels yielding An automatic winding, 60 hours of power reserve, all this pivots on 38 joules. One of the advantages of 2 barrels versus 1 for Rolex is that you have a more even torque release. So the Rolex in theory has 10 more hours of power reserve, but with the twin barrels in series here, you have less of an amplitude drop off after, for example, 24 hours. So when you wake up in the morning and you put it on your wrist, it's not going to be running slower the way the Rolex will. The Rolex still keeps great time, but 2 barrels in series beats 1 for consistency. Of course, you have a lovely set of machine-finished elements, but they're handsome. Engine turning on the base plate, satination of wheels. We have both blackened and black polished screws. We have a machined bevel on the edge of the bridges and an arabesque spiraled Côte de Genève. It's a good-looking movement in a good-looking watch and a very versatile timepiece, both dress watch and sports watch for him and for her. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details, and take heart that this is a master chronometer which meets all the COSC requirements, but is then tested as a fully cased-up watch. The METAS certification includes power reserve, winding efficiency, water resistance, shock resistance, anti-magnetism, and fully cased-up timing. It's the full package. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for details.